All right, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started. W- Hopefully, I think I figured out the issue we had last time with switching between windows. But if that doesn't, if that persists for some reason, please let me know. Um, so yeah, this is the second Excel session. It seemed like everyone from the last session was a little hungry to learn a little bit more about charts and data visualization in general. So that's what we're going to try and cover today. Um, I want to get to the actual practice as quickly as possible because I sort of underestimated the amount of time that things would take last session. So I might be a little quick, but as usual, I'm going to keep the meeting chat open. And if anybody needs, obviously feel free to just say, hey, Dalton, hold on a second. You can say that through your mic if you want, but I'm going to have the chat open also. So if anybody has a question specifically, they can put it in the chat. Um, so yeah, like I said, this is Excel session 2. Today we're going to talk mostly about charts, which it seemed like most people wanted to talk about charts last time. We got to it briefly, and we're actually going to touch on the spreadsheet that we used last time to manipulate some bar charts, and then we're going to move on to the example dashboard that I sent out, and hopefully everybody got the email earlier today with the update to that. Um, so yeah, the purpose of this session is learning to manipulate different types of data to create visual insights. Um, Hopefully everyone has this open. If you actually don't need to, but all the new information starts at slide 18 down here. So we're going to talk about charts, but the first thing we're going to talk about a little bit is the formulas that we're going to use today to manipulate the data in the first place to get the information we want to use for the charts. So today's mostly going to be concentrated on formula-wise. It's mostly going to be concentrated on COUNTIF. We will briefly touch on SUMIF, and then filter we'll use also. But the basis of those formulas is really the if function here, and then the count function. So I'll go through these briefly, just verbally explaining them, and then I'll show you examples of them. And if everyone at the moment can open up this customer feedback sheet, and let me know if you can't see this. Do you guys see the actual Excel sheet? I am actually recording the session currently. So yeah, I'll have to. Hopefully, it won't be too massive, but I'll get it uploaded here in the next day or two, so that you guys can reference this afterwards. I'm trying to do short little video versions of the specific techniques that we're learning, so that people don't have to scroll through an hour and a half long video. Okay, you guys see the sheet? Okay, that's good. Okay, so where is, there it is. Okay, so like I said, COUNTIF, we actually went over this a little bit last time um, in this sheet specifically, in the customer feedback sheet. But the basis of COUNTIF and the basis of a lot of these functions is the if statement itself. So if is a function that does exactly what you think it does. It's if this condition is met, then it outputs this true value. And if that condition isn't met, it outputs a false value. So I'll show you really quick. We'll just use, we'll just do a whole new column here. And I'll say, definitely know what they're doing. So what we want here is we want to know who, so this question is, are you comfortable with these shortcuts? It's 1 to 5. 1 is least comfortable, 5 is most comfortable. So I just want to have an if statement that says if they are a 5, it's just going to say yes here, right? So it's yes, it is a 5. So it would be equals if, and then the logical test, which is the condition that we're trying to meet. So if this cell equals 5. So it's literally exactly what you think it is. It's if that number equals 5, comma, the value if it's true. So in this case, we're going to put in quotes because it's text, yes. And then value if it is false, we'll just put nothing because I don't want there to be anything. So now you'll see that because that's a 5, it says yes. But if I copy that down and paste it here, it says no. Well, it says no. It doesn't actually say no, but it says no because the false value is nothing here. So if I copy this all the way down, you'll see it only puts yeses where 5s are. So this is the basis. It's useful for an unbelievable amount of things in Excel, but it's a useful thing to know as a basis for what we're going to be doing today, which is COUNTIF and SUMIF, which they do what you think they do. So count is the basis of this function is it literally just counts the number of values in a range. So equals count and then the range you're trying to count. So equals count. And then I'm going to select this whole range and just see how many there are. So there are 41 responses there. It literally just counts them. So I'm not sure, we went through it very quickly. I'm not sure how much you guys remember from the last session, but this was the survey that I put up to ask people how comfortable they were with various Excel related techniques. And we did some bar graphs on this last time. So what I want to do is I want us to all actually do that whole process again, but this time I'll actually go slowly so you guys, instead of just trying to rush through it. I think we only had like 10 minutes last time. So I'll jump back to this very quickly just to explain COUNTIF, because COUNTIF is what we're going to use for this. So the if statement, what we talked about before, is if this condition is met, there's a true value and a false value. Count counts the number of values in a given range. COUNTIF is a combination of the two. So you have a range that it's counting if it meets a criteria. So with that in mind, if we wanted to count how many 5s there are, it'll just count them. Instead of having to go through the two-part process of having something that says, yes, this is a 5, and then counting it, it does it all in one step. So that's how we're going to get to the values that we want for this to create some charts. So what I want everyone to do, if they can, is these titles here, we're going to create charts just on this sheet because I think it's easier rather than creating a new sheet and trying to reference this page. I think it's easier just to do it down here. So we're going to take these titles right here for these columns. We're going to copy them and we're going to paste them somewhere down here. It doesn't really matter where. And you guys might not have it text wrapped like I do. So yours should look like this. So if you copy it and paste it down here, it might look like this. And if that's the case, a very easy way to make it readable is to hit this wrap text button up here. And it makes it so it sizes the height of the rows and the height and width of the rows to make it actually readable. How's everyone doing? Does anybody need me to go back? Okay, so what we're doing here, the reason I did this is because we want to have a count of, so this was a 1 to 5 scale, right? So what we're going to do over here is we're just going to type 1 through 5. Because we want the count of ones for this, ones for this, ones for this. We want a count of each of these values for each of these questions. because it's pretty hard to interpret this information the way it is. So I think it'll be much easier if we use bar charts for this. So once you guys have it set up like this, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, this question, are you comfortable with Control C, V, Control X shortcuts? We're going to count the number of ones for just this. So we're going to use COUNTIF. So I'll actually make this bigger. So hopefully it's a little more visible on the screen. So equals COUNTIF, open parentheses. So just like every other formula, it always starts with an equals, then the name of the formula, and an open parentheses. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to count how many ones are responses for this question. So the range we're trying to count is this range right here, right? Because this is the first question. And this is why I like to paste. If you do this too, it's nice to paste the questions right under their corresponding columns of responses. But yeah, so equals COUNTIF, this range, comma, the criteria in this case is just this. So just click the 1 or tab over or arrow over to it, close parentheses, and press enter. So what you should see is there are 2 1s in this data set, which we can actually look up and down this really quick and see that there are just 2 1s. So you're like, okay, well, I could have probably just counted that, and that's fine. But the reason this is amazing, the reason every formula in Excel is amazing, is because now we wrote this formula, and these columns are all one apart from each other. These are all the questions themselves are the same number of columns over as the response columns are. So we can actually copy and paste this. Oh, sorry, I have to admit some more people. We can actually copy and paste this formula once we lock some cells into all these other ones. So, um, oh, so what would we want to lock here? So hopefully you guys remember from session 1 how cell locking works, but you put a $sign before the row or column reference, and that locks the row or column reference. So if we think about what we're doing here, which for this range right here, the range, what do we want to lock here? Anybody? Am I going a little too fast? Yeah, yes, but we don't. So if we're going to copy and paste this over this way, we don't want to lock one portion of it. We want to lock half of it, but we don't want to lock the other half. So in this case, I'll show you, and I'll explain it afterwards. But in this case, we don't want this range to ever move this way, right? Because it doesn't make sense for it to move this way, because then we're losing values up at the top of it. But we do want it to move this way when we copy this formula over. So we want it to move within the columns. We don't want the rows to move. So in that case, we lock the rows. Again, we lock the rows because we don't want it moving rows. We do want it moving columns. And then the criteria portion of this, which is A45. So we do want, we want this to go this way, right? So we want it to go up and down through 1 through 5 because it needs to reference that. But we don't want it to move left and right ever because it would be referencing something that's not one of the criteria. So in this case, we want to lock the column. So once you do that and you paste this into all of them, you get counts for everything. Because if you click here, it went down 2 rows like we wanted it to, but it didn't go over 2 rows. and it went uh, over two columns here, but it didn't go down or up any columns, which is exactly what we want it to do. So I'll do that again, and I'll explain the locking procedures, because I know locking is something that it can really screw with your brain a little bit. You just have to think when you're locking rows and columns. You have to sit here and think, all right, where do I want to paste this? I want to copy and paste this way. The problem is, well, actually, it already I locked them. I think I control Z and locked them. But yeah, so I want to copy and paste this way. But you can see now that I did that without locking anything, it gives you a bunch of nonsense answers, because this column moved down when it shouldn't have. It moved right, which is fine, but it moved down when it shouldn't have. And this should be here. So it moved down the way it should have, but it moved right also, which it needed to not do. So locking cells is one of the most important things in Excel, because it allows you to actually leverage one formula to process a ton of data super efficiently. So let's just talk through this one again. So and also let me know if anybody doesn't have the actual formula correct and it's not working. Please let me know that, and I can go back and explain the actual formula. But so we have the range here. This range is what we're trying to count, right? So if we're trying to count this range, if we want to paste it this direction, in this cell, it wants to count this range, right? In this cell, it wants to count this range. So you want it to move over a column every time we paste it over a column. But you don't ever want it to move up and down, because if it moves over, that's fine. But if it moves down, I'll scroll up. So you see it loses data up here every time it moves up and down, because the actual reference stays the same size every time. But if you start moving down this way, you end up losing data on the top of it. So this range, we want it to move right and left. So we want it to move within columns. We don't want it to move within rows. So if you don't want it to move within rows, you lock the rows. This one is the opposite. We want it to move within rows, but we don't want it to move within columns ever. So we lock the column. And then you can copy this and paste it all the way over, and you have your values for every single one. How's everybody doing? It's much different doing this not in person, because I can't see physical feedback. I can only respond to people telling me or chatting saying they need me to slow down. Okay, that makes me feel better. All right, so sweet. Okay, cool. So we're gonna put some charts in now. So if you want to, you can reference the, where did I put that? There it is. If you want to, you can reference the chart basics portion of this while we're going through this. It's probably, charts, I think, are by far the least complicated part of what we're doing. So I can just go through it. But in this case, we could probably do a couple different types of charts for this. But I think the most intuitive way to do this is bar charts. And you'll see in a second why it's best to actually stack these next to each other like this, by the way. But we'll get to that. So let's just do this first question first. Let's make a chart for this. So select this. You need to select the bar identifiers, and then the actual data itself and the question. So just select here this whole thing, and then go up to this insert tab, and you're going to click insert column or bar chart right here. And you can go to recommended charts too, which is nice because it'll show you some options. And you could certainly do something like a pie chart, or line graph doesn't really make a ton of sense for this, but it doesn't matter. So in our case, I'm going to just go up here and click this clustered column bar chart. And so you'll see once you click that, once you get a bar chart here, it will show you the data that it's referencing. So the title, it's referencing from there. These bar identifiers are getting referenced from here, and then the data itself is getting referenced here. So you can stop there if you'd like to. I like to format things to be a little more readable. And let's go through a couple of chart elements in general that you can mess around with. So we could delete this if we felt like, if we wanted to have this like under the data chart itself, and we didn't need a title, we could do that. And just remember, if you ever do anything by accident, you can always just press Control Z and undo it. In this case, I'm going to just bold this because I like the title to be bold. These look a little small to me. So, and you guys can do this or not do this. It's totally up to you. I like to make these a little bigger and bold them so you can see these a little easier so they're not like size 2 font. And you can reduce and increase the size of the chart. I don't really like these grid lines. So if you click like individual elements of the chart, it'll allow you to manipulate them. And if you double click them, it brings up a format thing over here, which I honestly think if you're going to be editing a chart at all, you should just go ahead and double click something because it gives you all these options over here. And you can, anytime you click any other element, it changes the options to whatever you're clicked onto. So yeah, if you just double click anything in the chart, it'll bring you this bar on the right. But in this case, I don't like grid lines, so I'm just going to delete them. This plus button over here in any chart type lets you add a whole bunch of different things. So you can add titles to the axes. You can add or remove the chart title if you want here. And now I need to bold this again because I just removed it. I have never used that, but I guess you can add a data table. You can add error bars and things like that. The important one for the most part, the one that gets used the most on bar charts at least, well, not just bar charts, almost every chart, is data labels. So data labels are really nice because it gives you the actual value here of the bar instead of having to like look over on the axis. And when you do data labels, you can say where you want them, or you can do a call out, which is a call out says the actual label of the bar, which is kind of useless in the case of a bar chart, but it can be useful in certain other types of charts. But this allows you to move it also. So yeah, the charts that I usually like to use, bar charts, I'll go over here in this data series thing and click on the bars. And I don't like these bars to be so skinny. I like to reduce the gap width, which it always seemed very unintuitive to me that they wouldn't just have like, I don't know, bar width as an option. They have gap width, which is the width between them. So like if you reduce the gap width, it increases the size of the bars, which just seemed like the backwards way to do it to me, but that's how you can do that. I like these to be a good bit bigger. And again, all of this, complete personal preference or the preference of the person you're doing the report for. If you want to, the axes here, well, not that one because that's not a measure, but this axis, if you'd like to, you can go to axis options over here, and you can actually increase or decrease the minimum and maximum. You can increase the units that it counts. So if you see right now, it's going by 2s. If I want it to go by 4s instead of 2s, I just type 4, and now it's counting by 4s. So that's over here in axis options. And I'm not going to go through every single option that's over here because it would take absolutely forever. But you can play around with it all you want. As long as you know how to access this, you can play around with this all you want to get the type of chart you want. The important thing here is I don't like this color, so I'm going to right click. So you can be clicked in anywhere. I'm going to click the bars themselves and then right click one of them and click on fill, and I'm going to make this purple because I like purple. There you go. So hopefully everybody has a chart and can mess with it a little bit. The important part now is that we need to make charts for these other ones, right? So what you could do is you could go through the whole process of selecting this, and I think you can probably do it like this. Control selected and insert. So you have another graph, but the problem is this is not formatted at all in the way that we like it to be. Well, at least I like it to be. So if you want to do it super, super quickly, you take this chart that you already have, you just copy it. So I guess I'll right click, copy, and then paste it. And you see it's literally the same chart right now, right? But the nice thing is it has these little boxes here. So if you want to, you just drag the box over and suddenly you have the same chart formatting, but for this question instead of this question, and with the values for this question instead of this one. So I'll do that again really quick. So you can copy this, the chart itself, and you just paste it wherever you want, as long as you don't. Sometimes what'll happen is you'll copy it and then you'll accidentally paste it onto the same one and it'll screw up. Don't worry, just press Control Z and you undo it. But so copy it and paste it. And then you'll see anytime you're clicked into either of these ones, it has the reference boxes over here, just like any formula does. You just drag this over and suddenly you have the same formatting in the chart for the second question. And if you want, you can do that again. So paste it again, drag this over. You have the third question. Copy it, paste it again, drag it over again. And now you have all 4 questions. And you know what? If I go back and I'm like, I actually don't even want this axis, and I want, let's see. See, now I'm forgetting how to, oh, I guess it doesn't give you that option, does it? I was trying to find percent, but I'm not sure it gives you that option when it's not a pie chart. But yeah, say I wanted to change something, like I deleted that axis, and this one I'm like, I actually want it bigger. Same thing, super quick process. Copy, paste, 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 and then I just drag this one. Oop, drag this one, drag this one, drag this one. Changed everything. Oop. Oh, you're having, it wouldn't copy and paste for you when dragging. Interesting. Is anyone else having that issue? So the thing that I've noticed with Excel is if you did this, if you had this one down here instead, and I'll just, if you had this one down here instead, it won't let you, oh, I guess it will let you do that. Huh, weird. Sometimes it doesn't let you drag down for whatever reason, but it does let you drag across. Yeah, I'm not sure. Does your setup look exactly the same as mine, LaQuisha? Okay. So yeah, so you copy the chart. So here, I'll copy the chart really quick and then just paste it somewhere else. Doesn't really matter where. And then when you're clicked into this chart, so like see I can click between the charts. So if I'm clicked into this chart, then I go here and drag it. Oh, okay, okay, cool. So yeah, if I'm like, oh, I actually want these all to be different colors, then you just do the same thing and drag these ones over so that you have all the questions, and then you're like, I don't want these all to be the same color, so that one's going to be green, that one's going to be orange, that one's going to be red. So you can see how you can very quickly, especially if you have data that's symmetrical like this, where you have a bunch of questions, you can create data, or you can create a dashboard or insights for it very, very quickly. So hopefully everyone's relatively comfortable with that, but we're actually going to do something extremely similar to that in just a second. So if everyone can open up the example dashboard, that would be wonderful. And if you guys want to follow along, this is where we're going to be doing the portion that I've shown here on the deck itself. Um, so I think the thing that more than anything, something that trips up people with Excel is, especially when they're trying to create a dashboard or something like that, is the actual formatting of it itself. So it's nice to start with something like this where it's already formatted and you can just input numbers. But I think learning to create something that looks reasonably attractive is really important, because that ends up taking up a ton of your time, just creating Excel dashboards or reports in general. So I wanted us to take this data, so we have, I don't know if you guys have taken a look through this at all, but we have effectively the same data that we used last time, except I made 4 periods of nonsense data for us to use. So this is basically an example WebWorks output report here. So we have P1, P2, P3, P4, all the same stores. And then we have a directory over here, which I've sort of filtered a little bit over here. And we hopefully we can get, if we have enough time, we can talk about how you filter data for visibility. But we have a directory over here of market coaches, area coaches, who are obviously not real people, but yeah. So what we want to do here, what I want to do is say you wanted to create a little data insight, maybe for a dashboard or something like that, that says, what is, I want to know how many stores there are that have an average check below $13, average check from $13 to $15, and an average check that's greater than $15. So what we're trying to do here is, I'll just put borders here so it's a little more obvious what we're doing. But what we want to do here is we want to have a count of the number of stores that have less than $13 average check, the number of stores that are between this, and the number of stores that are greater than 15, right? And so we can do formatting before or after. I think we probably do the formula first and then try and make it look how we want to do it. But the idea here is do this, and then we're going to do this and probably create a chart for it of some type to put down here. And that'll sort of be an evolution into how you get something a little more like this. Um, but so how can anybody really quick, and I know this is annoying as hell, but it makes people think, what is the formula that I want to use here? I want the number of stores that are in each of these buckets. Yes, thank you. It's yeah, COUNTIF. So you're saying in this instance, you're saying, I want the count of stores if the average check is less than 13. So, I'm going to type average check P4 here to make it more clear what we're doing. But, so right here, we want a COUNTIF formula. But let's go into P4 just to get an idea of where the data is. So, there we go. Check average right here, column K. All right. So, we have a whole bunch of check averages. Looks like we have 0. I guess that store wasn't open. Anyway, so we'll go here and let's just start doing the COUNTIF. So equals COUNTIF. And the first part of the COUNTIF is the range we're counting. So, excuse me. The range that we're counting is, you could actually count the store numbers, right? Or you could count the check average column. It doesn't really matter because the count is exactly the same. Because this is saying, it tells you the number. It's basically just giving it a number to count. So we'll just select the check average column because it's the column we're talking about. But the next part of the COUNTIF formula, so we have the range itself. The next part, which I'll tab over to the actual deck itself. So the next part is the criteria. So in this case, and sorry, I was actually mistaken. The first part of this, you do actually have to select the check average column. But so the first part of this, we select that column. The second part is the criteria. So this column is the column of all check averages, right? What we're trying to figure out, and it's inconveniently covering up my little label right here, but what we're trying to figure out is if it is less than $13, right? That's what we're trying to count. So COUNTIF is some of the if functions are a little weird, where what we could say is less than 13, right? Because that's what we want. But if you press enter, it'll give you an error saying there's a problem with it. So the way it wants this is it wants this criteria in quotes. So I don't know if that is interesting. Did I select the wrong column? No, I didn't. Well, we get to do some troubleshooting. What? Oh, ha, there you go. So what happened was I kept clicking back and forth from the sheets, and this happens all the time. I kept clicking back and forth from the sheets, and if you do that, it references the last sheet you clicked to. So see how it's referencing in this formula for me? It's referencing the column on this sheet, which obviously has nothing in it. So we need to go back and redo this part of it. So I'll just start from the beginning. So equals COUNTIF. We're going to go to P4 because that's what we want the data for. We're going to select this check average column because that's what we want to count, right? And then you can follow up here. There's comma. We could do less than 13, which is the criteria we want, but it wants quotes around whatever criteria we put in here. So we're going to do that. And you should have an 8 here. Is anyone getting an error here? Cool. All right. So we have our number here. We're actually going to get to this one in a second because a range in the middle of something has multiple ways to actually get it. It's actually easier once you have this number. So This and this are almost exactly the same if you think about what they're asking for. It's asking for a count of a specific column. The count of the column is going to be exactly the same, but the criteria is just different between these two columns, right? So if we want, go up here in the formula bar and copy this formula and press enter or tab or something or escape and then paste it here. And you don't want to copy this and paste it because if you do that, then it counts this reference here moves. So if you ever want to copy a formula but not have any of the references move but not actually lock them also, then you can just copy it within the formula bar and tab or enter and then paste it. So if you do that, you should see that you have exactly the same formula that's in this one. The only difference here, if you think about what we're asking for, we're counting the same column. It's just the criteria that's different. So instead of being less than 13, this is greater than 15. And you're done. So I'll do that one more time really quickly. So you have this formula here. One way you could do this is you could actually just lock this reference here to the column on the other sheet. You could copy that and paste it normally. Or if you don't feel like locking it, you could just copy it from the formula bar and paste it over here. And then it's exactly the same formula because you want exactly the same thing. You want it to count this column, but you want it to count values that are greater than 15 instead of less than 13. So you should have 5 here. So this value right here, I'd actually like, so there are a couple different ways to get this value. Can anyone think what is a roundabout way to get this number? So these three numbers, right? This is less than 13 to negative infinity, right? This is greater than 15 to positive infinity. So this number is everything else, right? Because we have a limit to negative infinity, a limit to positive infinity, and then the middle portion of that is just everything that's not those two things. So what you can very easily do is you can do equals count and literally just count how many check averages there are here, right? So there are 37 total. So you literally just count how many there are total, minus this, minus this. So rather than trying to do, I think that's the easiest way to do it. There are other ways to do it. You could do some sort of like canceling COUNTIF function where it cancels out portions of the count itself. But I think by far the easiest way to do this is just, again, to do equals count, because you just want the count of how many total stores there are, basically. So go back here into P4 and just count how many check averages there are total. Press enter. You have 37, right? So then you just go up into the formula bar and do minus this cell, minus this cell. Or you could manually count this and be like a minus 13. But it's always better to dynamically reference. So minus that, and you should have 24. So does that make sense to everyone? I know it's a little, usually you'll have things like this though, where you have, if you're counting a range of numbers, you're looking for something that's in a small range, in the middle, and in a bigger range. So that it's a very easy way to do that is just to count the total and then subtract the things that are positive and negative. Okay, So the good news is we have all our numbers now. The bad news is it looks really bad. So uh, there are certain ways that I like to format things. Everybody's a little different. Um, I'll just remove borders there. But I think a good way to format things in general, and it's honestly how a lot of the people at Prometheus tend to format things, is you can format um, just using sort of like bricks of color. So something that I like to do is a lot of the times I'll do like a dark color for the heading and then make the text white. Um, and I'll bold it and then take each one of these and make them some different gradient color. So could do something like this and then do something like this, make those white so they stand out on the background. And then I probably want these centered. So just go up here and center them. And then this looks a little awkward because I made these a little big, but maybe we want them all to be really big. So I'll just increase the size of these even more and manipulate these row and column heights to make it make a little more sense. And then this one here, I know I say in the deck itself to never use this button, and you really should probably get in the habit of not ever using it. But in this case, it's probably fine because you're not manipulating this data. It's for display only. If you're ever doing something that's only for display and you're not going to be trying to like tab through it and manipulate data, then it's probably fine to merge and center. The problem with merge and centering is that if you try and like say if I try and select just this column, using a shortcut, it selects this whole thing because this whole chunk is just merged across all of these. So it counts it as being like one row road or one column roadblock. It's very annoying if you're trying to manipulate data. But in this case, you can probably hit merge and center. But if you don't want to do that, if you want to do it the quote unquote correct way, you can actually select all of these cells, right click it, and go to format cells down here. And then you have this alignment tab in format cells, and you can center it across selection in the horizontal portion of this. So I'll do that again really quick. So just select what you want, right click, format cells, go to the alignment tab here, and then in horizontal, just center across selection. And that makes it so that these are still counted as individual cells. It just centers the value that's in this column over this. And I want that to be a whole lot bigger, obviously. And maybe these floating numbers are a little annoying, so we'll just do borders here. And yeah, I mean, that looks presentable, right? I mean, it looks a heck of a lot better than just plain text on a white background. Oh, the other thing that I'm not sure, I guess I already did this, but so usually Excel will look like this. And you can print, so when you print things, obviously, like if I went to print this, it doesn't have grid lines here. But sometimes it's nice to just look at it as if it didn't have grid lines. Sometimes it's just nicer to look at it that way. So if you want to do that, you can go over to this View tab up here and click Grid Lines, and it removes those. And obviously, it doesn't remove the functionality of the actual cells. It just makes it so there aren't little busy lines everywhere. So let's make a chart for this. So what do you guys think would be a good chart for this? There aren't really a lot of bad answers. Yeah, there you go. Pie chart. It's a great way to do this because you have like three little portions, and you could probably do a bar chart too, but it definitely seems like when you have a hole like this where you're counting out of 100% of something, a pie chart makes a lot of sense. So we'll do the same thing we did before, highlight the actual the labels and the data itself. We'll go to this insert tab, and we can click recommended charts if we want and see the top two options are bar chart and pie chart. So we could click that, or we could just go over here and click a pie chart. And you can make it fancy if you'd like to. I'm going to just use a regular one. So in this case, we didn't select the chart title itself. So if we want to have a chart title here, we can just type it in. And it probably makes more sense to say P4 average check, right? Or I guess we could do average check dash P4. And in this case, see how this popped up over here? So this allows you to manipulate a whole bunch of different things. I'm not going to change too much on pie charts, but so in this case, we probably don't need this, right? Because we have this here. And what we can do is we can coordinate these colors to this here. So we don't really need this. So we can just delete it. And honestly, we don't even really need that either, do we? Because we have the title right there. So if we want to make it nice and clean, we just have a pie chart right here. And let's just make these colors coordinated. So that's the smallest one, right? Which is the greater than 15. And it might make sense to not delete the legend until you've done this, but we'll make that purple to match this. And then this one is this one, right? So we'll make that the same light gray that we made this. And then this big portion of it is this dark gray. So hopefully I remember which one that is. That looks right, doesn't it? Yeah. And then you know what? I guess we could do it this way. I think it's probably best to have some sort of data label. And we're going to click more options here. And so you can put a percentage here if we want. And because of these colors, we probably want to make these white just to be visible on these background colors. And maybe make them a little bigger, maybe bold them. I don't know if I like bold. Just make them a little bigger. So you can do that. If that that may not be, maybe you want something extra where you want the actual category name. So this is something cool that you can do where maybe you don't even want the percent, you just want the category name to show over each little bit. You can do that over here in the extra options for the data labels. So I kind of want all that information. I might want to make them a little smaller now, but I kind of want the category and the percentage on this. So that's what I'm going to select over here, and then you can click off of this if you want. So then this looks pretty nice, I think. You have your category, you have the data here, and then you have a nice clean pie chart below it. And to be honest, the data itself, once you get used to using these types of formulas, that doesn't take all that long. It's mostly the presentation of data that takes a long time. So getting really used to manipulating charts is a really important thing. And then also just getting used to how row and column widths interact with each other. Sometimes you might want to take like spaces like this and shrink them a little bit to make it a little more presentable. But then when you print this, and you can print it however you want, it probably makes sense to like center that a little more and stuff, but that looks pretty presentable. So how's everyone doing? I know we've gone through a good bit of stuff. but I would like to get onto this a little bit because this will allow us to combine a lot of the things that we've been doing so far. Good. All right. So here's a little dashboard that I made that utilizes this same data. So let's imagine that we wanted a report, someone asked for a report, or we wanted it for ourselves that says, here's the sales trend for P1 through P4 for this company, this random company. We want labor trend. We want the same average check categories as we had before. And then we want a listing of every store that falls in these categories, and then the market coach and area coach that are associated with those. So I formatted this already because it takes a little bit to format this. But let's think about how we want each one of these data points. So hold on, I'm going to take a drink really fast. So sales trend. So this goes back to session 1. So we have data in here for P1 through P4, right? So we have the same information. We have sales, labor, check average, all this stuff for all of these stores. Same number of stores for each one for periods 1 through period 4. What formula do we want to use to bring in that data here? Or do we want to use a formula at all? Does it make sense to use a formula? I think in this case, it very much doesn't make sense to use a formula. Yeah, so you could very much use a lookup formula if you wanted to, but since we have so few numbers, it's actually super easy just to go equals. So this is sales, right? So total sales for P1. There you go. And if you really want to, if you want to do it the super fast way, equals sales for P2 equals sales for P3 equals sales for P4. Whoa, what happened to P4? Oh, this is hidden. My bad, I didn't know I hid that. So if you have it, I imagine you do have it hidden the same way that I do. If you have this hidden like this, which will often honestly happen with data that you get sent, just select over the hidden portion and right click it and then click unhide down here. So same thing, P4 here equals click on P4, the sales number right there. And you have your data here already, right? So you could do a lookup formula, but it's a little bit of brain damage maybe to do that. And it's just since you have so few numbers, it makes sense. And that's the thing is formulas are a thing that you use when you need them and they make you more efficient, but sometimes they don't make you more efficient. You just have to think about what you want to do in the future with this. So if in the future you want this to update automatically, if I wanted to say add another tab next period that says P5, and then this would update to P2 through P5, and then these would pull dynamically from P2 through P5, then there's a lot of complicating factors in that you need to take into account in how you pull this. But if you want it to be, I mean, if you want it to be simple and just paste in new data here or something like that, it's very easy to just do this. So where is labor on this sheet? Let's find it. So direct labor actual is right here. So it's X41, right? So we'll do the same thing here. We'll just do equals, click on P1, and then click down here on X41. And another thing that you can do, instead of having to do this hunting and pecking thing every time, is once you have this number, you can actually go up here in the formula bar, copy this, and paste it over. Oop. Just kidding. You can copy it, paste it over into these, and then because these cells have their, or because these cell references have their tab reference over here, and they're just one different, and the cells align in every single tab here, you can actually just type in P2, type in P3, type in P4, because X41 on P4 is direct labor. It's the total. Now, to do that, you have to make sure that all the cells and all your tabs align. But when that happens, it's very useful because it allows you to do things like that. And it's just a good way to familiarize yourself too with what each part of this little reference means. So this portion before the exclamation point is the tab reference, and this is the cell reference. So there you go. So does everybody have these numbers in? If not, it's okay. Yeah. Okay, so I think I think it was like this when you got it. So to unhide, you just select over the area that's hidden. So see it goes B to K right here. So there's obviously a C, D, E, F, G in here somewhere. So what it means is this area of cells is hidden. So what you need to do is select over it, right click, and click unhide. Because yeah, a lot of times you'll get data too that'll have a bunch of rows and cells hidden, especially if somebody else has manipulated it before you, and uh, it can screw you up in all sorts of ways. So it's a useful thing to know. Okay, so we have the sales trend info in here. We have the labor trend info in here. We could start putting in charts, but I want to get all the actual data in here first, and then we can get charts in here and make it look pretty. So this average check is exactly the same as we did before. So what formula are we using here again? Somebody other than LaQuisha. I can't tell if you're trying to talk or not, but your mic might be muted. Oh, okay. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Arturo. COUNTIF. So we want to use COUNTIF here. So exactly the same thing. So this is a dashboard for P4, right? So these sales trend and the labor trend, they span all 4 periods, but the average check here is going to be just for period 4. So like Arturo said, we're going to use COUNTIF. So equals COUNTIF. We're going to go over here to P4. The range we're going to select is the range of check averages, which is right here. So select this whole range right here. And then comma. The criteria, remember, is less than 13. But remember that COUNTIF is a weirdo and wants this to be in quotes. And then you press enter. And you should have 8 here. So COUNTIF, the range of check averages, and then the criteria that you're applying to that range, which is it needs to be less than 13. So as we did before, if you're here, you can copy this formula in the formula bar and tab over and paste it here. And the reason you can do that is because you're referencing the same column. And you just change the criteria to be greater than 15 instead of less than 13 and press enter and you'll have 5. Or instead of doing that, you can lock this row and column, copy this and paste it over, and then do the same thing, greater than 15, press enter. And then this middle one, we're going to do exactly the same thing where we're excluding these numbers from the total count of all data points. So equals count and we're going to count all of the check averages and press enter. And you don't have to press enter here, but it's useful to piece the formula together. But so now you have the total count of all of them, and then you're just going to go up here into the formula bar and then subtract out the less than 13s and the greater than 15s, right? And you have 24 here. So how's everyone doing on that portion? All right, if everyone's doing all right, so these, we'll worry about formatting a little later. They're kind of ugly right now. So here we're going to introduce a new formula that's pretty fun. So a lot of you guys probably know that if you're in a data set like this, that you can go over and sort it and filter it. So if you press filter, you get all these little filter buttons that allow you to filter down by if I wanted just one store's info, etc. It allows you to do that. So that's a pretty common thing that people do. But there's actually also a function called filter that allows you to dynamically pull lists of things like this. So we want it's almost like what COUNTIF is doing here, except instead of returning a number, it's going to return a list of stores that the criteria apply to, which is extremely useful. I wish I'd learned this way earlier than I did. But so if you want to, you can go to the deck, and it starts on page 25, the filter function. But the filter function is actually relatively simple. So filter has two parts. So it has the actual range that you're filtering. So it's the thing that you want as the output. So in this case, the thing that we want as the output is the store numbers that the criteria applies to, right? So we want the store numbers here that have average checks that are less than 13. So the clumsy way of doing that is going like equals, or not equals, but you could come over here and you could filter this whole thing and then be like, all right, we want, where's check averages? There it is. We could unselect all of them and only select the ones that are less than $13, right? We could do that. And then you have this list and you could copy this and you could paste it over here. You could do that. The problem is it's not dynamic. So if you ever want new information in here, you have to do that every single time you do it. The easy way to do it is the filter function. So the filter function is kind of like the COUNTIF function where you go equals, I'll make this a little bigger so it's visible. So equals filter. So you have the array and include. So in the array is just the range that you want to filter. So we want store numbers here. And then include is the what you're trying to basically count and the criteria for it. So the first part is the store numbers, right? So we're going to go over into P4 here, and we're going to select the row or the column that has the store numbers in it. Then we're going to put a comma. The second part is what to include. So in this case, we're including the check averages. We're including based on the check averages. And if the check averages are less than 13, and in this case, you don't have to do quotes because for some reason Excel isn't consistent across some of these formulas. Oops, did I select the wrong column? I think I selected the wrong column. No, I didn't. Why does that have so many more? Does everybody else have this many? You do have that many. What did I? Are there more down here that I didn't? Hmm. Okay, let's just do that again to make sure that's working correctly, because that doesn't seem like it's working correctly. So we're going to select the stores, comma. Hmm. Why are some of these I don't think have check averages that are less than 13? I'm not sure what's going on. 31. Okay, that has a 0. Yeah, it should count the ones that say 0 though. I think the last time I did this, I got like 5 or something. 32, 365. Oh, you know what? No, I'm silly. It's actually right. It's because I reversed these. Okay, never mind. Ignore everything I just said. So it is actually correct. I uh, I was just doubting myself because I actually reversed the sides of these to make it more consistent. So I'm just confusing myself. So yeah, so you see what it did though, and it's a really cool function. So it pulls out this entire list of things that are less than 13. So I'll do it one more time really quick. So equals filter, and you're filtering the store numbers. That's what you want to actually have as the output, comma, the criteria that you're using, which is the check averages, and you need them to be less than 13. And it filters that out for you, which is wonderful. So uh, you should have a whole row, and it's because it's an array formula. When you press enter here, the formula is only in this top cell, but it fills in all these cells below it because it's spilling all of the extra data down below. So what you'll see is if I go into like 23,690, let's see if I can find that. 23,690. Ooh, where are you? There it is. I don't know why. Oh, it was because I was selected. So if I wanted to go over here and say, make this one $15 instead of that, now it just removed it from this list because it's dynamically looking at the column and filtering out what it actually needs. So we did that. The only formula is in this cell. So there's things in this cell, but not really. It's just values. Everything, the information is contained here. So we're doing exactly the same thing over here, right? So we're filtering the same exact data, but for greater than 15, exactly like we did over here on average check. So what we can do is we can copy this from the formula bar and tab over and paste it here. But instead of less than 13, we just do the same thing we did last time, greater than 15, and press enter. And now you have it filled in for greater than 15. So every period when this data gets updated, it'll update you with a list of stores that fulfill these criteria that you want them to fulfill. All right, hopefully everyone's doing good on that one. We only have about 15 minutes left here, but I want to try and get through the rest of this if we can. So the formatting stuff we can go through in a second. What we want to do here is not only do we want the store number, but we also want the market coach and area coach that are associated with this, right? So we certainly want these to be dynamic because these are going to be dynamic, right? So we definitely want these to be a formula. So what formula do you think we want to use, considering we have all of this information over here, right? So we have this directory over here that has store numbers, and it has ACs and market coaches here. So what formula would we want to use to get that information here? Lookup. Yeah, lookup. Lookup is exactly what we want. So filter would be a little difficult on this one just because the data that you'd be filtering by is on these sheets. It's not on the directory itself. So I guess what you could do is you could pull this over to the directory sheet and then you could filter it that way. Um, but in this case, it's really easy to just, since we have the store number here in this column, we can look up the store number here and find the appropriate market coach or area coach here. So what's here is usually the data will come in something like this, where it's like their full name, or this is a common thing that happens with names is you get them in various different formats. So I actually converted them to first initial and then last name. And I left the formulas over here to do that in case anyone's curious on how to do that, because I don't think we're going to get to that today. But I did that because sometimes if you look up something like this, and I'll show you, we'll just do it in the first place. So equals X lookup. X lookup, you're always, this is the lookup value, the store number, right? Comma, the lookup array. So we're looking up the store number in this column in the directory file. And then after the next comma is the return array. So in this case, we're looking for the market coach, right? So we're going to click the market coach column and press enter. So in this case, that's fine. But sometimes, like if you're trying to format something to fit in something like this, people's names are something that can vary a lot in length, right? So you could do this with the full name, but I think it's actually better in this case to do a shortened version of their name, which is why it's part of the reason that formulas like this come in handy, is that you can shorten someone's name dynamically. Or a lot of the times you'll just get a name in a format that's ugly and you have to use it to reference something else. So it's really useful to be able to clean this up. And I think next session we'll talk about data cleanup. But yeah, so in this case, we want to do the same thing. We want to do equals X lookup. So we're looking up the market coach for this store right here, right? So the lookup value is the store number, because that's what we're using here to find it on the other sheet, comma, the lookup array, which is where we're looking up the store number, which is the store number column, comma, the return array, which is the market coach. In this case, we want the shortened market coach name. And then we're going to press enter. So in this case, we can just copy this and we can paste it all the way down. And so now it pulls the market coach's name. Actually, I apologize. I already made a mistake. You can't do that. Because remember, these arrays here are going to move. Even though they're on the other sheet, the array references are going to move every time you paste this. So you actually need to lock these because you don't want them to move. You do want this one to move, obviously. You want this one to move up and down, but the columns that you're referencing are never going to change size or anything, so you want to lock them. So you want to copy that and then paste it down. So now you can do exactly the same thing for the area coach, but it's super easy to just, it depends on how your brain works. For some people, it's easiest to just copy this formula over, paste it here, and then edit the details of it. So it's one column over, right? So area coach is one column over from market coach. So it's F. So for some people, it makes more sense to just copy the formula over and then just put F in here instead of E. And then you have the area coaches. Or for some people, it makes sense to just start it all over and do equals X lookup, the store number, comma, the store number column, comma, the area coach column, and press enter. And then remember, you need to go back in here and lock these ranges, copy that, and paste the formula down. So we're running out of time a little bit. You guys can, it's the same process for these, but I want to get charts in here really quick because I think that's sort of what we want to finish up, is we want this to be a usable dashboard. So one thing that's kind of ugly right now that I want to fix is these. So like I said, this is not, because it's a dashboard, you're not going to be manipulating data on it a lot. You can merge and center these if you want. I'll probably do that just for the sake of brevity. But so that looks reasonably okay now. So for these sales trend and labor trend, what do you guys think we want to use as a chart for this? The keyword I think here is trend. So you can definitely use a bar chart. So this is another one where it's kind of debatable what you want to use. Usually in trends, you want to use a line graph just to show the trend over time, but you could very much use a bar chart if that's what you're more comfortable with. In this case, we'll just use a line chart just because we haven't used that yet. So we're going to go over here. You can click recommended charts and it gives you all your options. Obviously that doesn't make any sense, but we're just going to use line chart, or you can go over here and just click line. And it follows exactly the same rules as all the other charts we've done so far. So in this case, what do we want and not want? Don't really need the chart title because we have that up here already. I would like to probably make I'd probably like to make the line purple because purple's cool and it matches what we already have. Maybe delete the grid lines because I don't like grid lines, but you can keep them in if you like. Maybe add some data labels so that we know which one is which. Everything's a little small here, so probably want to, I don't know, increase the size a little bit, maybe bold it to make it a little more readable. And so these things, another thing you can do in charts is like, obviously in the data labels portion of this, you can move them around if you want, but sometimes you'll get like mostly where you want, but you'll have one or two data points that are kind of annoyingly obscured. And in that case, you can actually click on the individual one and you can literally just move it. So in this case, I'll just move it there. You can also put on markers. So I'm going to put on some purple little where are the little things? There we go. So you have to, it defaults to none, so you have to select something, but you do like little diamonds or something, or whatever you feel like doing. So I think that's a reasonably all right looking chart. We could probably do a little more with it, but for now we can just mess with this. So what you can do is you can copy and paste it. Oop. And hopefully it'll let me do this. You can do that. And I'm not sure why. Sometimes it does this where it changes like a color or something. It kept most of the things intact, which is nice. But you could do that, or you could uh, just recreate this the same way we just did. So insert a line graph here, and then remove the chart title, remove the grid lines, increase the width of the line a little, make it purple. I think I actually didn't make this line that thick. Go over here, add some markers. And this, again, this is all personal preference. I'm sort of just doing this to get it to like an at least somewhat aesthetically pleasing state. And then over here, we did a pie chart last time, so why try and fix what's not broken? We'll just do a pie chart again. Whoa, what is going on there? Oh, I wonder. Huh. Interesting. So I think because this got merged and centered, you actually might have to. So this sometimes happens where you'll have it doesn't like Excel doesn't like having, so technically because these are merged and centered and this cell has data in it, this one doesn't, this cell has data in it, this one doesn't, etc. I wonder actually maybe if I just merge and center these ones, it'll fix it. But sometimes it doesn't like it if when things are merged and centered when you're inserting columns or inserting graphs. See, it still does it because there are extra cells here. So in this case, what you can do is you can actually just make a little reference thing down here that is uh, that has your numbers in them. And you'll see this a lot with sheets is they'll sometimes just have some nonsense down here. And the reason you have nonsense there is sometimes Excel wants to behave in a particular type of way. So in this case, I just made a little normally spaced version of the same chart, and it's linked to this chart. Like these cells are linked here, so anytime this updates, that updates, and it'll update the chart. But it's just sometimes you have to do little workarounds like that when you're trying to format things in a particular way. But we'll do the same thing. We'll delete that. We'll delete that. This is the smallest one, which is the purple one. Oop, I accidentally selected the whole chart. This one is, it's not really important at the moment whether you guys are exactly keeping along with this. I just want to show you sort of how this works. And once you get used to using these different types of formulas, the data input process takes almost no time. It's almost all of the time is just spent doing the formatting stuff and getting used to which types of data should be used for what type of thing, or what type of chart should be used to display a certain type of data, things like that. I hope this has been helpful. It's a lot to pack into a short amount of time, and I hope I wasn't moving too quickly. But please let me know. I'll send out a survey after this, like I did last time, and you guys can let me know if anything was too fast or too slow, what you want to see next. I think one of the things we'll probably do in the very near future is go over cleaning up data, which isn't the sexiest thing in the world, but it's one of the best things about Excel is a lot of the times you get data in formats that's really ugly, and it doesn't really allow you to use it to interact with other data sets that you have. Like sometimes you'll get a name in this format and you'll get a name in this format, and you need to figure out how to convert between the two. So that's something we'll probably touch on next time. We might get into a little more trying to make something like this a little more dynamic, like I talked about earlier, which is, so in this case, if you wanted to add like a P5 tab, if you did that, you would have to go in here and manually update all of these to be P2 through P5, and then you'd need to update all your formulas to reference the new sheets, which basically makes you rebuild the whole thing, which is very frustrating. But there are ways that you can set this up. So obviously, a lot of this stuff will dynamically update as it is. But if you want to like add new things, then there's a bunch of different ways that you can do that where it'll make it so this dynamically updates when you add a new tab and you never have to touch formulas, which is a very fulfilling thing to be able to do. Um, so yeah, like I said, I hope this was super useful to you guys. Please let me know what you think when I send out that survey, because I'm only here to help you guys. Um, and yeah, I mean, if anybody has anything they want to ask now, or uh, yeah, just go for it. That was an amazing pun. I mean, I appreciate you guys' patience because it's fun. I actually kind of like it sometimes when we run into little errors, like when I got a little confused about the filter thing or something like that. Just because that happens all the time when you're creating something like this in Excel, and troubleshooting data issues is so much of the time sink into Excel. But yeah, I appreciate you guys being patient with me when I occasionally run into a roadblock. Well, cool. Yeah, I mean, if If that's everything and you guys feel comfortable, then I appreciate everyone coming as usual. And I'll send out that survey pretty soon. And if I did record this session, and I'll go back after this and I'll probably record a little bit of the specifics of things like filter and COUNTIF and upload short videos of that. But hopefully this full video will also be up online at some point. I'll just have to see how massive it is.